like where this is going. Ugh.
Hi, I'm Ashley, and welcome to my channel and to the start of another reading vlog. So I just recently finished reading Bull Moon Rising, and this is a fantasy romance book, and after reading this I want to read more fantasy romance. So that is what we're going to be doing in this video. And also work for the last 2 weeks has just been like really stressful, and I've worked a lot of extra hours, so I really feel like all I've done is like eat, sleep, and go to work, and I've only like read like a tiny bit the last 2 weeks. And so this week I'm hoping to have a better work-life balance. But also this is like the busy season for my work, so regardless of anything, it's probably going to be stressful. So I also just want to escape reality, and what better way to do that than escaping into fantasy romance books. And so I have 3 fantasy romance books I want to read in this video. One of them I have a physical copy of, and then the other 2 are on Kindle Unlimited, so I'm going to be reading them on my Kindle. So the first one is Sword Cross by Freya Marsk, and this is a fantasy romance, but it's supposed to be more like a cozy fantasy romance. And this book just came out in October, and I had it pre-ordered, so I am super excited to get into this. And then the second book on my TBR for this video is Metal Singer by Rachel Schneider, and this one I actually learned about through watching Emmy Rossam's videos, and I will link her channel down below because if you haven't watched her videos you should go check them out because she has quickly become like one of my favorite booktubers over the last couple of months. And so she had high praise for this book and really loved it, and so that made me intrigued to check it out. So I am really looking forward to reading this one, and I hope I love it as well. And then the third and final book on my TBR for this video is Bloodguard by C.C. Robson, and this one actually just recently came out in the US. I've had my eye on it for a while because the cover drew me to it because it's a really pretty book, but I just realized recently that it's currently on Kindle Unlimited, so I'm going to read it on there, and then if I end up loving it, I can always end up buying myself a physical copy. So those are the 3 books I want to read in this video. So I am going to start with Metal Slinger because it is the one that I'm most intrigued to find more out about, because I read like the back description of the book, but like just reading the back of it, if Emmy hadn't like loved it as much as she did, I don't know if I would have picked it up because the back just makes it sound like a lot of other fantasy romance books. But since Emmy loved it, now I need to check it out for myself. Okay, so I'm only a couple pages in, but for whatever reason, like the very beginning of this is giving me a Ren in the Holly Library vibes. Hi, so it's a few days later. It is now Tuesday, November 19th, and it's nighttime because I worked today, but I wanted to give an update on Metal Slinger because I am now on chapter 20, page 174. And I'm about 36% of the way through this book according to my Kindle. So let me first tell you a little bit about what this book is about, and then I will give my first thoughts. So our story follows our main female character, Bryn, and Bryn's people are referred to as the Alaha, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right at all. I do apologize if I'm butchering it. But anyways, her people were exiled from their homeland by the Kenta people. And so now her people, like, they live at sea, and their new home base is made up of trees, so it's like a giant tree house. They live in the trees, and they have like rope bridges connecting them. But every year, once a year, are allowed to return to their homeland and attend a market that is hosted by the Kenta people. And Bryn is trained to be a guard, and all guards, as a rite of passage, they get to go to this marketplace. And so that's how our story starts, with Bryn and the rest of her class and her best friend Kai, who graduated the year before, all going to the marketplace. And so they get there to the island, and the commander is like, okay, make sure you stay in groups. But something ends up happening, and Bryn ends up on her own. And she realizes that she is being followed. And the person following her is a young man, and he ends up catching up to her, and he ends up accusing her of stealing something, which she has not stolen anything, and he actually plants something on her from one of the stalls. And then from there, chaos ensues. She ends up meeting back up with her friends, and they flee the marketplace and go back to their ship. And meanwhile, another member of her class ends up setting off explosives on the island. But because of the explosives, Bryn and her class and the commander are able to get away on the ship and go back to their home base. But of course, their actions have consequences. And soon after they arrive home, they get a message from the Kentic people demanding that they hand over Bryn and the other girl who set off the explosives. And of course, Bryn's people refuse. And then, not long after that, lo and behold, the mysterious stranger that accused Bryn of stealing ends up showing up at the island, and our story goes from there. Now for my thoughts. So far, I am thoroughly enjoying this book. It hasn't done anything that has wowed me yet or amazed me, but it feels very much like your typical fantasy romance. It's following the fantasy romance formula, and that's a good thing. It has everything so far that I expect from a fantasy romance. You have your main female character who has a mysterious past because she doesn't remember anything before the age of 7, and lo and behold, she is going to turn out to be someone very important with secret magical powers that she doesn't know of. And I know that is overdone in fantasy romance, but I love that. I love when main female characters have secret magical powers. I am also probably in the minority where I don't mind overpowered characters if it's done well, which we don't know yet if her powers are going to be overpowered, but they probably are. Things are hinting towards that. But I'll be all there for it if they are. And also, she is also an outcast among her people. So she grew up parentless, and a lot of people look down upon her because of that, because she's kind of just an orphan. Also, our main female character has already got an animal companion, and I love when our main characters have animal companions, and this one is a bird that she names Blue, who I'm already loving. And then the romance so far, it definitely seems like it's leaning towards the kind of enemies to lovers, because it's definitely clear that she's going to end up having a romance with the mysterious handsome stranger. This book, technically, there are 2 love interests, because at the beginning you have her best friend Kai, who he actually ends up proposing to her to marry her, because among their people it's kind of outlawed for them to date, and they end up getting a match when they come of age. And that's the person that they're expected to marry. And so he ends up proposing to her. And of course, his father is a leader of their people. And so he's next in line to be the leader of their people. And in the beginning, Kai seems like a really nice guy. But then there starts to be some red flags. So it seems like the romance is going to lean towards this handsome, mysterious stranger. But that being said, I could be proven completely wrong. Kai could still come back and end up being the love interest. Who knows? But right now, that's looking kind of doubtful, but you never know. And there's already been amusing banter between our mysterious handsome stranger and our main female character. So yeah, those are all the elements that definitely feel very much like your typical fantasy romance. And like I said, that's not a bad thing. I like that, and it actually makes this book feel very comforting to me. However, that being said, it hasn't yet distinguished itself from all those other fantasy romances. It hasn't done anything yet to stand apart from all the other fantasy romances that I've read. It hasn't yet reached a level of From Blood and Ash, which is one of my favorite fantasy romances. But that being said, there's still plenty of time for it to become amazing. And so those are all my thoughts at the moment. I am very excited to read more because, like I said, I am very much enjoying this. The book is very readable and easy to read, so I'm just quickly flying through this. And I like that it's simple and easy to read because I'm reading it during my work week. It work so far has still been stressful this week, but I pretty much it is going to be stressful until December ends, so that's expected. But very much liking that I can read this book and not have to concentrate too much to read it. But yeah, I'm going to end this update now because I feel like I'm just starting to ramble. But I will be back when I have read more and I have more thoughts. I don't like where this is going. Ugh. I've heard that there was a plot twist in this book, and I feel like this might be it, and I don't think I'm gonna like it. And there's like 16 minutes left in the book. Okay, I need to stop for a moment because I just read chapter 56 and I didn't like it. I don't like it at all. I don't like it. It might ruin the whole book for me, unfortunately. It's just, there's all of a sudden there's this like plot twist that doesn't make any sense and doesn't need to be there. Like, why? Why is it there? I don't want it there. It needs to go away. Just, that whole chapter just needs to be taken out and removed from this book because it just ruins everything. Like, it just cheapens the whole entire book. Ugh. I don't like it. Okay, I only have 13 minutes left, so I'm gonna finish this, even though I'm like kind of angry now that that chapter just happened. Like, no, like it didn't need it. Like, why do sometimes authors try to do these big plot twists that they don't need and just ruins the whole entire book? Ugh. Okay, carrying on. No, I don't like this. Oh. I don't like this at all. Oh, how can like the last like 10% of a book go so wrong? Ugh. I don't even want to finish this, but I have 8 minutes left. I just have to make it for these last 8 minutes. Done. Oh, I'm so sad now that that took the turn that it did. Oh, no. Oh. Yeah, no, I didn't like it. Did not like that plot twist or the ending. It just, that one chapter near the end, it just felt like it was forced in there to do the plot twist. Like, the plot twist could have existed if there had been like evidence leading up to it, but I feel like since the book is in first person and the way the plot twist happens, it just doesn't make sense and it cheapens like the whole feel of the book, and I just didn't like that. And that being said, I am not reading the next book. I'm sorry, but I can't do it. Nope. There's so many books to read, and just the way that plot twist just left a bad taste in my mouth, and I can't read the next one. Like, that was not good writing. I'm sorry. Hi, so it is Thursday, December 5th, and I'm finally back with a reading update. So I did finish Slinger today, and you can probably tell by the clips before this that I did not like the plot twist that was in here. So there is a plot twist, like, near the very end of the book, I think it was the second to last chapter, that I read it and I'm sorry, but I just did not like it at all. I feel like it came out of nowhere. I feel like there wasn't enough lead up to it, and that plot twist, like, it just ruined the entire book for me. Like, I have read a book before where there was a similar plot twist, but that plot twist, like, it made sense and I accepted it because there was stuff that led up to it, whereas this one, I feel like there just wasn't enough leading up to it, and so it just felt really out of the blue and not right. Like, it wasn't believable. And I really hate that because before that, I was really, really enjoying this book. I felt like the book was like coming into its own. I was really enjoying our main characters, our love interests. There were some really great minor characters in here that I was loving. And then this plot twist just came in and ruined it all for me, and I feel like it just cheapened the whole book, in my opinion. Which is just my opinion. So I know there's other people who have loved this book. I hated the plot twist. I didn't like it at all. I feel like it should have just been completely removed. And after that, like, I really didn't want to continue reading because the plot twist, like, ruined the book for me so much. But I did finish because I only had one chapter left. It was painful to finish, but I did. And I'm really sad because before this plot twist, this probably would have been a 4-star read for me. But now, because of that plot twist, it's probably like a 2-star for me. And it's like probably one of my least favorite reads of the year now, which is really sad. And so, yeah, I won't be continuing on with the series because there's just so many other books I want to read. And the plot twist of this book just left like such a bad taste in my mouth that I can't. So, I started this reading vlog to escape from reality and the stress of work. Work has still been really stressful and I've been working many hours. But now I need to read a book to escape the plot twist and ending of Metal Slinger. And so, I'm going to be reading Sword Across next. And hopefully this one will not have any out-of-place plot twists. And this one is a fantasy romance, but I think it's more on the cozy side, so that I could really use right now. And it does say up here, high heat, low stakes, and sharp steel. So I'm going to start this, and I will be back after I've read a little bit with my first thoughts. Hi, so it's been a little bit since my last update. It is now Tuesday, December 17th, and I've made it to a little over halfway in Sword Cross, so I am on chapter 14, page 202. So I just wanted to give a little reading update before I have to run off to work this morning. So first, let me just tell you a little bit about what this book is about, and then I'll share my thoughts on it so far. So this book is dual perspectives, and our two main characters are Maddie and Luca, and the two of them couldn't be any more different from each other. So Maddie is quiet and reserved, and he's very much the think before you act type, and he puts his family in their wool business, which he is the head of, before all else, even himself. Luca, on the other hand, he is more impulsive, he's a charmer, and he does what makes him happy. And also at the beginning of the story, Luca has left his family, and it's kind of hinted at that something bad happened and he kind of ran away from the whole situation. And so the two of them are strangers until they meet one night at the bar, and their first meeting is not a good one. And essentially they meet when Maddie ends up colliding into Luca. And the end result is that Maddie steps on and breaks a very expensive pocket watch that Luca was retrieving for someone else. And so then Maddie is kind of faced with a dilemma because he knows the right thing and the expected thing to do is to pay for the pocket watch. And Maddie is from a very well-known and successful family, and so everyone assumes that his family has money. But the thing is that Maddie's family has fallen on hard times recently, and their business hasn't been doing too great. However, they have kept the fact that they are struggling a secret, so everyone else outside of their household doesn't really know the struggles they're going through. And so Maddie does end up giving Luca the money to replace the pocket watch. The thing is, Maddie was recently engaged to be married, and the marriage is very much like a business one. He's doing it to save his family and save the business. But that money that he gives to Luca was supposed to go towards hiring a sword for hire. because in this book you hire what is called a best man, a sword for hire, in case anyone opposes your marriage at the wedding. And unfortunately for Maddie, the girl that he is marrying, is no secret that she has an admirer who is also a really good sword fighter, and so he knows that that guy is probably going to challenge their marriage, so he needs to hire someone that is really good. So now when he goes to hire the swordsman, he is short on the money that he needs to hire someone who is at the level that he needs. But the head of the agency is like, hey, I have this newcomer and he's pretty good, but he's also charging less because he's not established yet. So Maddie ends up deciding to take a chance on this newcomer because he doesn't really have much choice. And lo and behold, the newcomer ends up being Luca, the same guy that he met at the bar. And Maddie quickly learns that the whole pocket watch thing was a scam put on by Luca, specifically targeting Maddie because he was well dressed and looked like he had money. And so Maddie is, of course, mad about that, and he demands Luca to give him his money back or he'll call the authorities. But Luca's like, hey, I don't have the money anymore because I needed to give that over to secure a spot in this agency. And after Luca giving a demonstration of his skills and a lot of back and forth between the two of them, Maddie does end up agreeing to hire Luca, but on the condition that Luca also gives Maddie sword lessons. And so our story goes from there, with Luca beginning to give Maddie sword lessons and the two of them getting to know each other. And also it starts to become clear that someone might be sabotaging Maddie's family business, and so Luca and Maddie start to try to figure that out as well. And I also want to mention that the front of the cover does say it's a romantasy, and I know there is technically a difference between romantasy and fantasy romance, but at the same time, I feel like the two just blur together in my head because they feel very similar. I notice when I'm looking at books online, a lot of times they'll be categorized as both fantasy romance and romantasy, which doesn't help the blending of the two in my brain. But anyways, moving on, now for my thoughts on this book. So far I am enjoying this, and it has just been like really, really cute and sweet so far. This book is very much more on the cozy side of things. There's definitely less action than Metal Slinger, which I just read. And just the pacing of it feels more relaxed, and I definitely have felt like a feeling of peace while reading it as well, which is great because work has still been very stressful. As I mentioned, the romance is just really super cute and sweet, and it's felt like pretty wholesome so far. There has been some hint towards like steam might come later on, and actually where I just ended off, the next chapter has the potential to get steamy. But so far there's just been so many cute and sweet moments between Maddie and Luca, and the book has just been like taking its time with the two of them getting to know each other and understand each other, and I've just thoroughly been enjoying seeing their romance develop. The banter between the two of them is super entertaining to read, and you can really feel like the yearning and the tension between them just like coming off the page. I'm gonna share a passage from the book that just shows how sweet and cute the romance has been so far. So on page 145 it reads, Maddie had been looking down at his feet. When Luca spoke, he lifted his head, and the smile that broke over his face was like the moment when a lock surrendered to Luca's picks. Something gave way before it. Some small piece of machinery fell in Luca's chest with an audible click. Some unseen hinges opened, and a soft, unfamiliar happiness flowed through the crack. Before now, Luca's experience of Maddie's smiles had been that they were sidelong things, unconscious or grudging or hard-won. And now Maddie was bestowing this one upon Luca, allowing it to light his features to something extraordinary, as though Luca deserved it. As though Luca need do nothing more than exist for Maddie to be glad to see him. And so that little passage just like warms my heart so much. It makes me smile. My only complaint so far is that in the beginning there was a lot of sword talk about like the different forms that you do while doing sword play, and I feel like that went into a little bit too much detail for me, and I kind of didn't really need to know all that. But at the same time, like maybe it's just because I'm like really overtired right now from work, and maybe like my brain just can't handle that right now. And then in the same vein, there was like one instance where the book went into like great detail about the wool business, and I felt the same way. Like I was like, I don't need to know all this detail. But again, that just might be a me problem because I am just overtired and stressed out from work, and so I just want like light, fluffy reads. But overall, so far this book has felt like a warm hug and has been delightful. So those are all my thoughts on Sword Cross for now. My next update will probably be with my final thoughts once I finish this. Hi, so I'm back with a reading update. It is December 31st, so it is the last day of 2024, which is crazy. And I have some reading updates. So I did finish Sword Cross, and I also binged All a Bloodguard. And didn't vlog that at all because I devoured that book. But before I talk about that, let me give my final thoughts on Sword Cross. So I ended up loving this. It's getting 5 stars. So this book is very much on the cozy fantasy romance side. Overall, it has a very warm-hearted feel to it, and there were some stakes in this, but nothing like crazy like, oh no, we gotta go save the world or something like a lot of fantasy romance books have. Romance in here was super cute and sweet, and there were 2 steamy scenes that got quite steamy and they were kind of long. As I mentioned in my last update, I had a feeling that the next chapter that I was going to read was going to be quite steamy, and it was. And that was chapter 14, and that chapter was 26 pages long, and most of it was steamy, but also like between the steam there was also like conversations were going on between our 2 main characters, Luca and Maddie. And somehow that first steamy scene, it felt kind of wholesome, which is really weird to say about a steamy scene, but I think it's because they were having a lot of thoughts and they were talking to each other and they were just like sharing their vulnerabilities during that steamy scene. And then after that steamy scene, the next steamy scene wasn't until near the end of the book, which was chapter 20, and that one again was also long. And again, the steamy scene was almost the whole chapter of that book, and that one was 17 pages long. So I feel like that last one felt a little long, like it could have been shorter in my opinion. Again, there were some other stuff that happened at the beginning of that chapter. And again, there is some conversation that's happening between Luca and Maddie as well. If you aren't a fan of like steamy scenes, you could skip those because there are plenty of really super cute and sweet moments between the 2 of them that don't involve steam. And speaking of the characters, I thought Maddie and Luca were both very well developed and layered characters. At the beginning of the book, like there's clearly things that they both need to work on, and by the end of the book they have addressed those things and they've started to work on them. And a large part of that is because of their relationship, and through their relationship they're helping each other grow into better people. And in addition to the romance feeling very cozy mostly, also another factor of this book that added to the cozy atmosphere was these characters' families, especially Maddie's family. They're just also very supporting and caring towards each other, and that was just very heartwarming because a lot of times in fantasy romances you have some member of the family who's not very nice or is like plotting something evil, but you don't get any of that in here. His whole family just wants the best for each other, and that was just so heartwarming and refreshing. And even Luca's family, even though they're not in here a lot and he's clearly at odds with them, they do come into play a little bit near the end of the book, and through their actions near the end it shows that even though they might have their differences, they still very much care about him and want the best for him. Then another thing I wanted to address was the world building in here. So it is a fantasy world because it's a made-up world, but there is like no magic in here. The world feels very much like a Victorian England kind of world because you have the noble families, they belong to houses. You have that clear line between the nobility and the common people. And also in this book, everyone is like a member of a guild, so depending on your career, you belong to a certain guild. And And all these guilds each worship different gods and goddesses. So I thought that was a neat little touch to the world. Again, like the gods and goddesses, they're mentioned, but none of them like make an appearance in the books. So it doesn't have like that type of magic in it. But even though there wasn't any magic in it, I didn't think the story needed it. Which is saying something because I usually love magic in my fantasy stories. But this one, it just didn't need it, and I enjoyed it very much for what it was. And then this is a standalone, and as such, the ending wrapped up really nice, and the way it ended, it very much reflected the cozy fantasy feel of this book. Like, the people who deserved their happy endings got their happy endings, and the people who didn't deserve their happy endings got what they deserved. So overall, I would definitely recommend this, especially if you're looking for a fantasy romance that is on the cozier side but still has some stakes. Now let's talk about Bloodguard. Before I get into my thoughts, let me just tell you a little bit about what this book is about. So in this book, we do follow two main characters. We have our female main character and our main male character. But unlike a lot of fantasy romance books, this book introduces our main male character first, and he is Leaf, and he is a gladiator who fights in the Colosseum in the city of Arrow where this book takes place. And he has been a gladiator for 3 years, and he is trying to become a Bloodguard. And in order to become a Bloodguard, you have to win 100 battles, and he is only 4 battles away from accomplishing this. And the title of Bloodguard is a title that was given to the first 8 generals of Arrow of the city, so it's a very prestigious title to have. And if he gains that title, he will become a citizen of Arrow, and he will become very rich. And the whole reason he even became a gladiator was to help provide for his mother and his 2 sisters, and he especially did it for his younger sister because she has been sick with an illness and the medicine is expensive. And so his goal is to become a Bloodguard so he can give his family a better life. And then it isn't until chapter 4 that we get the first chapter from our main female character's point of view, Maeve. And Maeve, she is an elfin princess. She is the granddaughter of the previous queen. But the queen died a little bit before the start of the book, and one of Maeve's fathers was blamed for her death, and so he was imprisoned. So Maeve is now dealing with the stigma of being known as the daughter of the queen killer. But she believes her father is innocent, and she wants to become queen so she can clear his name and free him from prison. But in order to do so, she has to first have a king. And she is almost 21 years old, and when she turns 21, that's when she could take over the throne. But the thing is, she has had several betrothed who have died, and she doesn't really have many options left. There is one person that she could marry, but she doesn't want to marry him because he's an awful person and she doesn't want him to be king and have power. But then she sees Leaf in the arena. And she comes up with this idea to marry Leaf because if he gains the status of Bloodguard, then he will be a suitable match for her. So she ends up meeting him and she says, hey, if you agree to marry me, then I will help you in any way I can to become Bloodguard. At this moment in time, since the queen died, like, becoming Bloodguard is almost impossible because right now there is someone else who is temporarily ruler of the lands until Maeve is old enough to marry and take over. And pretty much the only person that becomes Bloodguard at the moment is the ones that the people in favor want to become Bloodguard. And right now they don't like Leaf. But Maeve has inside influence, so she can help him become Bloodguard. And at first, Leaf is very reluctant, but eventually he does agree and the two of them end up working together and our story goes from there. So now for my thoughts. So I'm not gonna lie, at first when I started reading this, I was a little unsure about whether I was going to like it because the writing style did seem a little clunky. And right before reading this, I did read Spectacular by Stephanie Garber, and she has like a very lyrical, flowy writing style, so I was just coming off of reading that, so that's probably why the writing style of this like really stood out to me as being a little bit clunky. Also, like, Maeve and Leaf as characters at the beginning, they seemed a little generic, but as I continued to read more of this book, the characters in the story really started to grow on me, and And then before I knew it, I was completely captivated by this book to a certain point where I didn't want to put this down and I just wanted to keep reading. And I think that feeling started because of Maeve and Leaf's relationship. So from the very beginning, Maeve and Leaf, like, they both realize that they're attracted to each other, but they don't act on those feelings. And they distrust each other for obvious reasons. But as they get to know each other, the relationship starts to develop and they start to develop feelings for each other. And just their romance overall was just so super cute and sweet, and it made my heart so happy. And that aspect of the book with their romance felt very cozy and wholesome. And in the same vein, Maeve's whole entire family, I loved them so much. Just loved how much they all cared about each other and how they were all there for each other. Similarly to Maddie's family and Swordcross, Maeve's family, they also just all wanted the best for each other and they all cared about each other very much and would do anything for each other. And so I love that whole dynamic there. And also this book has cute animal companions in it. There are moon horses and estrellas, and estrellas are kind of like magical lemurs. They are very smart and like they can understand humans, and also they can mimic the sounds of other animals and communicate with those other animals. Maeve's family has like a whole family of them and they're just all so precious. And so those elements of the book just made my heart so happy. But that being said, this book is very cutthroat, very dark, is definitely not cozy fantasy, and definitely look at the trigger warnings that are at the beginning of this book, because there is a lot of violence in this, and death and gore. And so, after those happy times that happened, there was a plot twist, where something very sad was revealed, but when they revealed it, my mind immediately went to something that had been hinted at earlier in the book, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. That's what that was pointing towards. So it was a plot twist, but it was a plot twist that made sense. And while it broke my heart a little bit, I could live with it because it made sense in the world of the story. And then after that plot twist, some other stuff happened that was super sad and devastated and broke my heart into a million pieces. But the ending of this book put my heart back together. So the ending of this was a happy one. This is supposed to be the first book in a series, but this book seemed to wrap up Leaf and Maeve's story very well. I have a feeling it might be one of those series where the book takes place in the same world but follows different characters. And I would love if that was the case, because in the story, we are introduced to Maeve's sister, who is a little bit younger than her, and she's a super interesting character, and the book keeps some things about her a secret, which makes me think that the next book could be focused on her story, and I hope it does, because I am super fascinated by her character and I need to know more about her. And also she has a love interest that's already been introduced, and he also has some mysterious things about him that this book kind of hints towards, but we never get the full story. I think that was intentional because I think the next book could be their story, and I really hope it is. And so overall, I just love this book so much. It really made me feel all the emotions. It was a roller coaster of emotions. There's times I was super happy, and then times I was just despairing about what was going on. But I feel like all the pain was worth it in the end because of the ending. Also, another thing that I really like about Bloodguard is the fact that Leaf is a gladiator, that he's not like a prince or a king, because I feel like a lot of love interests in fantasy romances are princes or kings. And I also like that he doesn't really have any magical powers or anything. He's just someone who has worked very hard. He's been fighting these battles at the Colosseum for 3 years, and through experience he has become a really good fighter. On the flip side, while Maeve might be a princess, she also isn't overpowered. Like, yes, she can fight people because she was trained to defend herself, but she's not like super powerful or anything. Though a lot of people do tend to underestimate her because she's a princess. And also you get to see her use her cunning as well in her intellect, which I really liked. So I do feel like the two of them stand out from the main characters of other fantasy romances. So I definitely recommend this book, but just definitely check out the trigger warnings first and make sure it's something that you feel up to before going into it, because it is a lot. It is very intense, very fast-paced, very action-packed. While there are super cute and happy moments in it, there's also a lot of heartbreaking moments as well and darker things going on too. Okay, so that was the final book I wanted to read in this video, so we are at the end of the video. So if I had to rank these 3 books that I just read, I would do Bloodguard as my favorite, and Sword Chorus after that, and then lastly Metal Slinger. And I'm still very unhappy and sad that the plot twist in that one went the way that it did. I really wish it hadn't happened, because if it hadn't, that book probably also would have been 5 stars for me. But that's just my personal opinion, because I know there's a lot of people who loved the book, so I wish I was one of those people, but I can't get behind that plot twist. But anyways, if you have read any of these books, let me know down below what you thought of them. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye!